Well, welcome back to the show where we want to be here.
Yes. I think we do want to be there. It's not a have to, it's a want, right?
I think it's definitely more of a want than a have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
I never dread meeting. I
No,
never
me neither.
dread talking and taping.
No.
You know what is a have to for me is doing taxes.
Oh, God. Talk about complex trauma. I have to tell the story now. So I do my own taxes. I use TurboTax. My dad is an accountant, so I grew up with, a lot of shame around that, but thank God for TurboTax. So last year I did our taxes just like we do every other year, went through all the questions. It always works really well. And then about 2 months ago, we get a letter from the IRS saying, geez, you had all this money that wasn't on your tax return. And I'm like, what the hell? And it was from my counseling business, which is always on there. There's no way that could happen. There's no way. So I pull up the old return and I'm looking where normally it asks those questions and inserts it. And I remember answering the questions for that part of it. It wasn't in there. It just wasn't in there. So I'm like, part of me was like freaked out because I'm like, something I did wrong. But I know I answered those questions. So and I found some solace and I'm like, they must have answered the questions and then it didn't save or something, which totally sucked because then we had to send a ton of money to the IRS that we hadn't paid before. But it is this sort of, have to, right? Like death and taxes, those are the two things you can't control, right? But this have to, you can have some want tos and have tos mixed in together. But why are we talking about this today, right? The have tos are things like, I'm not a nudist. If I were, then I could leave my house without clothes on. But we could say, it's a have to wear clothing in front of other people. Sort of societally sanctioned. It's illegal not to if you're outside your house. A want to might be like, oh, I'm wearing, a particular sweater that I like or whatever. There are a lot of have tos about work, right? Seems like I have more have tos in work than I do in my personal life versus a want to.
Yeah.
And I think because it's the NeuroMarvels podcast, if we talk about this in terms of neurodivergence, I think you come up against a lot of this in terms of the judgment of behavior from neurotypicals. You see it a lot with kids where the parents are like, they have to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And how do you navigate that which is necessary to get what you want? You may have to have to study in school, whereas a lot of have tos to get what I wanted, which was really good grades. And who's instilling that? Who's saying you have to do that? And the social aspect of it, I think it's really hard because someone may not want to go to a party, but they feel like they have to. So they start to negate their own needs. We can throw another word in there. And then they get exhausted or whatever. So it's like, where does the one end and the other begin? A have to versus a want versus a need versus a price you pay for any of those kinds of things or whatever. But I can remember my therapist making this differentiation. I was saying have to. And she would say, is it a have or is it a want? And then, of course, I wanted to,
strangle her.
You're really mad at that. I'm like, oh, what the hell was that? They're different. She explained the difference to me. And I'm like, oh, why is it important to delineate the difference? Are you giving away your power to somebody else? Are you allowing them to dominate in that way? Because if you have choice in it, we've talked so much in this podcast about when you're in childhood, a lot of that power you don't have. Yeah. But if it's something you really don't want to do, then you have choice and now you get to start trying to change the system. Like, I'm not going to go to that party because I don't want to expose myself to all that noise and small talk and all that kind of stuff that I don't enjoy. That could have an implication on, my friendships or my relationship or whatever. But then you also are able to talk about it more and give context and so on. but there's a line in the movie Parenthood. It's a million years old with Steve Martin's in it. It's a very good movie. It's like from the 80s. I apologize for dating myself. But the there's a part in the story where Steve Martin's wife gets pregnant again now with their fourth kid. It was unplanned. And she's telling him about this. He had just quit his job. And she's like, "Can you get your job back?" And he's trying to get packed up together to go coach Little League because he's coaching his kid's Little League team. And then she says, "Why are you leaving? Can't we talk about this?" Because she's found out she's pregnant again. And he's like, "No, I have to go coach Little League." And then she goes, "Do you have to or do you want to?" And he says, "My whole life is have to." And I was like, I still remember that line because it was like, oh my God, there's so many of us that live our whole lives in terms of like what you're supposed to do, what you have to do, what is necessary. Most of us would like to not have to work and still have money to support ourselves, but we can't do that. But
Yeah.
where is the line with some of these more subtle things around do you have to or do you want to? And then the last piece, and then I'll shut up and let you talk some too, is that want piece. I think we get tamped down about it because your want is a kind of vulnerable. I feel it like deep in my stomach even when I say the word want.
Mm.
There's this, I have to get this thing and maybe I have to rely on somebody else to get it, and that's a vulnerable thing. And to even say I want this thing, now you have the propensity for someone to kind of crush you by denying that to you, or you can't have it for whatever. There could be barriers to it, so that can feel icky, you know. I wanted my dog to live longer, but she didn't, and that's
Yeah.
painful. So there's all those delineations around why it's important to talk about the difference between want and need and have to and some of these other phrases that we use around that. Big
Yeah.
word.
My
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big stuff. And my mind goes to obligation.
Yeah.
There's this
Yeah.
other category of I have to, I'm obligated to, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think that there's some, maybe some different cultural or religious,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
maybe kinds of values or systems that get set
Mhm.
up for people,
Mhm.
um, where I can't say no. I can't refuse. I
Right.
can't opt out of that.
Yeah.
Um, I see this also when I'm supporting parents, and mind you, their kids are adults, but
Mhm.
they're
Mm.
parents nonetheless. And they say, no, 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 no. They have to have friends. No, they
Yeah.
have to have a job. No, they have
Mhm.
to, shower every day
Yeah.
in this way. No, they have to look
Mhm.
this way because life is hard already. No, they have to lose weight because, like it's
Yeah.
all of these pieces. And this is so complex because it gets wrapped into what people are deeply anxious about, deeply care about, are worried about.
I was gonna
You
say fear. Even
know,
when you were saying that, what your parents would
yeah.
say, I was feeling the fear. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to uncover those things,
Mhm.
and that, there is nothing that is guaranteed and nothing, I mean,
Yeah.
you said death and taxes, but, outside of those things, there just aren't guarantees.
Yeah.
We aren't in control of all the variables. Actually, we're in control of very little.
Yeah.
And as therapists, we are often doing the what can you control? Let's focus on those things. Let's let the
Mhm.
things go that are outside of your control. There is nothing we can do
Yeah.
about that. Right. And that is really hard to do. That is
Yeah.
not like an easy thing. And I can see why it's part of a 12-step program.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the first steps are about, learning the difference of what you can and cannot control, right? Yeah.
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 Right.
And
And it's like,
realizing
I
there's a
think
lot that's outside of your control. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much, right? And so I feel like I'm often in this position of challenging.
Mm. Yeah.
And when I mean challenging, I don't mean for that to sound so um aggressive, actually. It's
Yeah.
just more of like, let's shine a light on this. Let's nurture this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's take a look at this one a little bit more closely. And why
Yeah.
is there an attachment
Yeah.
to this particular thing.
That's a really good point because it's not always logical. I think about
Yeah.
people that have a fear of flying, which they don't. It's a fear of falling, but that aside,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not logical. So I can talk with people that have a fear of flying, and there's a reason citing statistics around the number of deaths per flight versus
Right.
you have a way higher percentage of dying in your own car when you're driving, way
Yeah.
higher. So why doesn't that work when you're explaining that to people? Because it's that control thing, right? It's well, I'm driving versus the pilot, and I have to let go of control for this thing. So it's really is that sort of letting go of control. But if you don't get into those edges, you never get into efficacy. So I can have someone say to me, "Oh, I want my laundry to be done," right? Which don't we all?
Yes, please.
Yeah, for
Folded.
my
More about folded, like
yeah,
done
or
and
folded,
folded. Yeah. Mhm.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
For my laundry to be done, I have to do it. There's no, or I mean, I
Mm,
suppose I could say, what other options are there? If I have money, I could say I'm going to pay someone to do it, which most of us don't
mm,
have, right?
mm.
So if what you were saying is if you confront, it's not meant to be adversarial, but if you confront that basic idea of you want the laundry done and put away, you're the only person in the house. How else would this happen? And then, oh, well, I have to do it. Yeah, you kind of do. If you want it done, you have to do it. And then you can try to break down the steps to get there because maybe there's executive functioning issues or
Mhm.
there's energy issues and all kinds of stuff that can get in the way. And then we can even disarticulate that and say, how much laundry do you have? And do you need to create that much laundry? Are there ways around that, et cetera, right?
Mhm.
Um, like if I wear a sweater on a day to see clients, I wore this sweater yesterday, but it's over a shirt and I didn't wear it all day. So I wore it again. I didn't wash it in between. That's
Yeah.
logical.
Yeah.
So there are always ways to get into the want and need, but it's this larger insurmountable thing, or it feels insurmountable. And then the can't is another one that used to piss me off that my therapist would say, is it you can't or you won't? And then I'd be like, oh God, there we are again, because it's true. Is it that I can't or is it that I won't? And then you get into like that demand avoidance thing that we've talked about before, which really
Yeah.
is about control. I have no control, so I'm going to choose not to do this.
Yeah.
But it is important for me to say I won't do it rather than I can't, because if I say I won't, now it's my decision
Yep.
and I'm the one in control, which is why people say I will not fly somewhere. Now they're in control, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Logic aside, all the logic out the window. So you're going to drive 10 hours through 6 mountain passes in the rain and the snow instead. I hope you survived, so it's not logical, right? But breaking it down to those steps and finding places where you can empower someone. And the reality is, life is full of a lot of have tos. Life is full of a
Yeah.
lot of uh, don't want tos, but you kind of have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And, I think, Dana, when you say it's not that I can't, it's that I won't.
Mm-hmm.
What immediately happens there is that means that I also take the responsibility and the
Yes. Yeah.
accountability of this
That's
choice.
right. That's right.
And I think that is what can be such a turnoff for people.
I don't want to be responsible.
What do you mean? And
Oh my God.
it brings up something like for me where this happens a lot to my non-speaking clients
Mm-hmm.
who struggle with language expression, but obviously have a lot of thoughts about the world and when their motor systems allow them, they can type and write
Mm-hmm.
and things. But for whatever reason, for these clients, I keep saying to these teams and families, respect the no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't know why we don't respect the no.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if someone said to you verbally, I don't want to do that,
Yeah.
it makes me really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It hurts me.
Yeah.
You would say, oh my gosh. I hope you would say, oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, thanks for telling me. Like, let's figure out a workaround for that. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, oh no, they're just being willfully disobedient.
Mm.
So we don't respect the no, which then leads to things like aggression and
Yeah.
violence
Yeah.
because it's the only thing I have left to say, oh my goodness, I'm telling you
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, we do this with children. We do this with
Yeah. Oh, you're
you
supposed to
know,
get over it. Don't be neurotic. Just my wife doesn't like elevators and oftentimes avoids them and takes stairs.
yeah.
It's not
Okay.
affecting her life in a way that's problematic right now. So what? But we're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, you shouldn't have a fear of elevators. What's wrong with you? You should confront that. I'll tell my students that. I'm like, you're a psychologist. Haven't you conditioned her out of that? And I'm like, it's not my place.
Why?
Yeah, it's not. If she lived on the 30th floor of a building
Yeah.
and wasn't able-bodied and couldn't get upstairs, but we stayed at a hotel back in November that had 7 floors. We felt so fit by the end of those 4
I
days
was
'cause
gonna say, if anything, you guys are like,
we were like, "A
you guys are
challenge, we're gonna close our rings on our watch because 'cause we're gonna go
yeah.
up and down 7 flights of stairs 4 times a day," and we were like, "Yeah!" And she's like, "That's so
Yeah.
cool that you're seeing this as a challenge." I'm like, "Why not?" If it was 30 floors, I may have taken the elevator,
Right.
but
And I might have taken the elevator and said, "Hey, babe, I'll meet you up top."
that's
Like,
right. Yeah, exactly.
whatever. But those aren't the things to die. Like, that's not the hill to die on
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
mind. And so, even with some of my families, I'll say, maybe some of the frameworks to use, or is it against, the legality, morality, health, and safety kinds of
Yeah.
aspects. Is this against the law? Is this against like
Mhm.
someone's moral code or moral compass? Is this unsafe for this person?
Yeah.
If it's not any of those things, can we allow
Mhm, mhm.
that to happen?
Yeah,
Why do we know better?
yeah.
I don't know. Like,
And these can be
anyway.
little things that you maybe think the pharmacy I go to, when you come out of the building, there's a sidewalk and then there's kind of like this really steep hill that's sketchy that clearly people aren't supposed to walk on. There's like gravel on there. It's like this 4 foot kind of steep gravel and then onto the street. And to have to go all the way to one side or the other to get to the parking lot's kind of a pain.
Right.
So I can look at that and say, clearly you're not supposed to walk on that, right?
Yeah.
Previous learning has told me that if I walk on a hill that steep when there's gravel on it, I'm going to hurt myself.
You could slip. Yeah.
So every time I see that, I'm like, oh, I want to cut. I just want to cut. I tried to cut going up a couple times, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that again because I started to slip. But it is sort of like something like that. Like, okay, you maybe think of that with the moral thing, like, oh, don't walk where you're not supposed to walk. Like these big silly things, like the sign says, keep off the grass, and you're walking on the grass.
Right.
Though it can feel so silly, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm going to go all the way around because if I fall at this age with all the other stuff I have, this could really be a problem, right?
Yeah.
Whereas maybe when I was 12, I wouldn't have hurt anybody just pounding down the hill, and it's not going to hurt
Right.
anybody.
Right.
So that reminds me what you're talking about. Like, is it illegal? No. Is it immoral? No. Is it going to hurt somebody? Well, I could hurt myself.
Yes. Yes.
So I never thought about the
And
hurt myself one. I'm like, that totally popped into my head. I'm like, yeah, I could hurt myself. And I realized why I always walk around now. It sort of always bugs me like, damn it, I wish they'd put something on there where we could take the shortcut. That's why I
Yeah.
don't take the shortcut. It's
Yeah.
not illegal, it's not immoral, but I can hurt myself.
But right, there's the kind of health and safety kind of issue
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that does give parents sometimes more freedom or more permissions to
Yeah.
let things go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay that we want to watch anime at 3 a.m, but we are able to sleep and get our things done. I don't know. Like, wait, what is it? I don't know. Like, how are we kind of thinking about these things? And, so really, really pulling apart, teasing apart, want
Mhm.
to, have to,
Have to.
should. I mean, like, like what?
Yep.
Don't
Can't,
want to,
won't,
don't wanna,
probably.
can,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right, right.
All right. This is why therapists get into the weeds in terms of semantics
We love it.
because they
We love
mean
it.
different things and then they frame things differently, and that affords all kinds of change. Yeah.
We love it. I mean, I
Mhm.
think this is when I think about why I became a psychologist, and I knew
Mhm.
very early on that I wanted to be a psychologist.
Mm.
Um, this is one of those things. I mean, is the ability to play with these thoughts, to follow this line of thinking in order for it to bring insights and elaboration and openness to living. It's really thrilling for me. It's really fun. I love being able to do that, and I love that it's a part of my job. And so but yeah, don't give us, we'll either tell, if you ask us a question, we'll tell you it depends, because it always depends on the context. And the other is that we will inevitably be analyzing language.
Yeah, because of what we talk about. Yeah, we've done that a lot on this podcast, even disarticulating what things mean and to try to point out the nuances of those different things. Yeah.
Yes, there is always nuance and there's always complexity. It's never as simple as you think it is.
Yeah, and even the silly example I gave about that hill by my pharmacy is you're talking, I'm aware of another layer, which is, I'm having to confront the fact that I'm to an age that if I have a fall, it's going to be a problem. And
it
then
could be serious.
That's a bigger, larger piece that I'm like, I just want to run down the hill because it's that piece is harder. And a developmental curve that I'm dealing with right now, right? So
it's your own transition, right? And like this kind of like real radical acceptance in where you are. And that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just where you are.
You don't have to like it, but it's where I am.
Oftentimes we don't like it. Oftentimes I'm like, wow, I realized on vacation that I rarely smiled with my mouth open. And it's because like wrinkles galore, I look at those pictures and I'm like, wow, I am looking old, and I realize that, or I don't like the way this looks, or I don't ever, it's this very self-judging kind of thing. But I realize like, oh, I have stopped smiling with my mouth open in pictures.
Like, wow, isn't that something?
It's that
we all think we're going to avoid those things, and then we all get
no.
there. And we're like, oh yeah, I didn't listen to people that were telling me this 10 years ago. There it is.
No, or people are like, I can't believe that she got a plastic surgery and stuff, and you just let yourself age. And I'm not there yet, but I'm like, oh, I can really empathize.
I can see where you could get there.
I can really see why you did that. So it's just from where you're standing.
Yeah, don't judge lest you be in the same pond. Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Unless you be in the same ever flowing toilet circling.
I know. I can remember one of my instructors using the example of the toilet flushing. I guess it's just stuck with me. Yeah.
Hey, Dana, what do you think about our new logo being just our Bitmoji faces going down the toilet?
Circling the drain.
Just circling.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be funny?
It'd be hilarious. Yeah.
It would be. It would be funny to you and me because we can laugh at ourselves in this way. But can you imagine if someone we went to a conference, here's our business card. Oh, I happen to be on this podcast with Dana Waters, and here's our logo, and it's just our Bitmoji faces heading down a drain. I can't. Sorry.
I had a picture of him handing out cards at APA with their little faces circling the drain. Oh my God.
This is for neurodiversity awareness and acceptance. Here's
That's right. We're in April. Here it is.
Oh, yes, we are in April. I can't.
Okay. Oh God, that made my
well, everyone, be good to you from signing off from Dana and I.
Enjoy
Dana and I circling down the drain.
Oh my God.
Bye, everyone.